recreation of the game, which goes as follows. Senet was a game that was meant to be played one-on-one. Each player would have a set of 5 to 7 pawns, and the goal was to move all of your pieces across the board. To move your pieces, you would use the ancient equivalent to dice, which were essentially sticks, or wooden dowels that were cut in half. These sticks would have a flat side and a rounded side. When you would throw these sticks, the amount of sticks that would have their flat side pointing up would equal how many spaces you could move. So for example, if you threw 4 sticks and 3 of them were flat side down and 1 of them was flat side up, you could move 1 square. From there, it is believed that the players would go back and forth rolling these dice and moving their pawns in a game that was more or less a mix of chance and strategy to eventually move all of their pawns to the other side of the board and eventually win. The gameplay is almost like Snakes and Ladders, as the pawns would move in an S-shaped pattern across the board. And similar to Snakes and Ladders, parts on the board would have significant special meanings. For example, the 15th square on the board was known as the halfway point, or the House of Thoth, and symbolized the start of the soul's critical journey from the overworld to the underworld. Square 26 was known as the House of Rebirth, and is regarded as a safe square that offers protection in the afterlife. It is said to be a nod to the mummification process, which was common in ancient Egypt. But in the context of the board game, what it really meant was landing here would give you a free turn. Square 27 was known as the House of Waters, and was actually a trap. If you landed on square 27, your pawn essentially drowned. It would be sent all the way back to square 15 or even to the start of the board depending on the rules you were playing. Square 28 was known as the House of Three Truths, and if you landed on this place, you would have to throw exactly 3 on the sticks to be able to advance. And square 29 was known as the House of Two Truths, and if you didn't throw exactly a 2, you would be sent back to the halfway point of square 15 once again. And finally, square 30 was known as the House of Horus. It was the final exit space, and if you could successfully land here with your pawn, you were essentially symbolizing the soul of your pawn uniting with the gods and achieving eternal life. As you can tell by my depiction of the gameplay alone, this game was deeply symbolic to the ancient Egyptians. And if it wasn't already obvious enough, this game was more or less a representation of the ancient Egyptians' beliefs about the soul and the afterlife. The board itself was a representation of the underworld. The pawns, or playing pieces, were a representation of the human soul, and the gameplay itself was a race between 2 people navigating through death into the afterlife, essentially fighting an uphill battle against the odds, which could be interpreted as fate, death, or a divine act of the gods. It's pretty crazy to think that such a simple board game had such a deep and significant spiritual meaning, and it just makes you think. If the game of Senet is a representation of the soul's journey going from the overworld to the underworld, what do other board games mean? For all we know, Ancient Checkers could have been the world's first dating simulator game. But degeneracy aside, during the Bronze Age, in my opinion, one of the most significant advancements in fun definitely comes in the form